as the waves of the Adriatic Sea caress the rocky shores of the Gulf of Trieste, carrying with them the scent of salt and the whispers of distant horizons. A pale vision begins to rise from the meeting point of sky and water. A white jewel, suspended between land and sea. This is not a cold military fortress. This is Miramare. In Spanish, its name means, to look at the sea. And that is exactly what it does. Miramare does not turn inward toward courts or politics. It turns outward, toward the infinite blue of the Adriatic. Take a slow breath. Can you feel the stillness here? Only the steady rhythm of the waves. The distant cry of seagulls. The wind moving gently through the dark cypress trees of the terraced gardens. Miramare possesses a beauty that feels almost painful. Its elegance does not shout for attention. It stands alone, proud, luminous, and quietly melancholic. Its story begins like a fairy tale, but it ends like a Greek tragedy. In 1855, a young archduke of the powerful Habsburg dynasty, Maximilian, first saw this wild promontory during a violent storm. His ship sought shelter along the coast of Trieste. When the sea calmed and the mist lifted, he saw this cliff stretching bravely into the Adriatic. And he fell in love. Maximilian was not a rigid politician. He was a romantic. A dreamer. A man who wrote poetry and studied science. He was also commander of the Austrian Navy, and the sea was inseparable from his spirit. He decided to build a home here. Not a fortress of war, but a sanctuary of love. He built it for his young bride, Princess Charlotte of Belgium. And so, Miramare was born. Look closely at its architecture. It blends Gothic revival, medieval details, and Renaissance elegance in a curious but harmonious composition. Its white stone glows against the deep blue sea. Its towers rise with measured grace. But the true magic lies within. When you enter Maximilian's private study and bedroom, something unexpected happens. The ceilings are low. The walls are paneled in polished oak. The rooms feel like the cabin of a ship. The windows are positioned to face directly toward the sea. Even while resting in bed, Maximilian could hear the waves striking the rocks below. He designed Miramare as if it were a vessel anchored in stone, forever sailing without moving. Those were the happiest years of their lives. Here, Maximilian and Charlotte created a world of their own. They painted together. They played piano in the evenings. They wandered through the vast gardens, where Maximilian planted exotic species collected from his voyages across the globe. Palm trees from distant lands. Rare shrubs from foreign coasts. They called Miramare their little paradise. A private Eden overlooking the Adriatic. But royal happiness is often brief. In 1863, a delegation arrived from distant Mexico. They brought with them an offer that glittered with promise and danger. The crown of Emperor of Mexico. Maximilian hesitated. He loved his peaceful life at Miramare. But Charlotte, ambitious and driven by royal destiny, saw something greater. She dreamed of empire. She urged him to accept. And beneath the glittering crystal chandeliers of Miramare's Grand Hall, Maximilian agreed to become emperor. It was a fateful moment. The day they left Trieste to sail toward Mexico, the sea was restless. Waves crashed violently against the cliffs. The wind howled. The people of Trieste whispered that it was an omen from the sea gods. They departed filled with hope and imperial dreams. They did not know they would never return together. In Mexico, the dream unraveled quickly. Civil war raged. Political alliances collapsed. French troops withdrew their support. Maximilian found himself isolated and surrounded. Charlotte, desperate, returned to Europe to seek aid. She came back to Miramare, not as a triumphant empress, but as a woman unraveling under the weight of fear. She locked herself inside the castle. She gazed endlessly at the sea, waiting, hoping, praying for news. And then, in the summer of 1867, the message arrived. Maximilian had been captured by Republican forces. He was executed by firing squad. Before he died, he reportedly cried, "Viva Mexico!" and softly whispered the name of his beloved Charlotte. His death shattered her mind. Charlotte descended into permanent madness. For the rest of her long life, she lived in illusion, convinced that her husband was still alive and would soon return. The corridors of Miramare, once filled with laughter and music, fell silent. Only grief remained. Over time, a legend formed around the castle. A curse. It is said that anyone who sleeps overnight at Miramare will die young in a foreign land. History seemed to echo the myth. Duke Amadeo of Aosta died in a prisoner of war camp in Africa. Empress Elizabeth of Austria, the beautiful Sisi, who often visited Miramare, was assassinated in Geneva. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who stayed here, was assassinated in Sarajevo, igniting the First World War. Coincidence? Or something woven into the salt air and stone? Perhaps Miramare's beauty is too perfect. Perhaps the gods grow jealous of those who claim it. Today, Miramare stands more radiant than ever. White marble glowing beneath Mediterranean sunlight. Stone sphinxes guarding shaded pathways. At sunset, the limestone walls turn golden, glowing against the deep blue of the Adriatic. It looks less like a fortress, and more like a monument carved from longing. Miramare is not merely architecture. It is a memorial to a love interrupted. It reminds us that power and crowns are fleeting. The jeweled crown of Mexico proved less precious than the quiet evenings listening to waves at Miramare. Maximilian had love. He had art. He had a dream built in stone. And he traded it for an illusion of empire. When you leave Miramare, turn back once more. You will see it standing there, solitary and dignified, facing the endless sea. Like a faithful widow. Forever waiting for a ship that will never return from beyond the horizon. Thank you for listening to the story carried by wind and waves at Miramare today. I hope this bittersweet beauty has touched something deep within your heart. If you enjoy these journeys through history, romance, and quiet tragedy, please consider subscribing to our channel. There are many more castles to explore, many more whispered stories waiting in the pages of time. Until we meet again, in another chapter of our timeless journey. Farewell, Miramare. And goodbye, wave candle sparkles.